Still in our lightning round, if you just joined us, pivoting a little bit back to technology, we see embedded analytics in everyday life. So it doesn't just have to be in analytics, although that's what we love. Can you all think of the most innovative example of embedded that you see day to day?
I mean, one that affects me in everyday life. It's like, when I'm heading to Manhattan and I'm waiting for subway, being in one of the stations that actually tell me when the subway is about to come is actually pretty cool.
Nice. For me, actually, I go back to like we used to call it embedded analytics, but we used to call like working with a lot of customers. We used to call it OEM, right? And if you think about it, like embedding in everyday life, like if you think about the car, for instance, right? There are a lot of different applications that are embedded in your car system today that are not manufactured by the car company, right? So like simple things like the interface on your screen, your maps, the Apple Play or the Android equivalent of Apple Play. I don't know what it's called, but like a lot of these are actually third-party applications that are in your car today. I know they are embedded in your car, and we all today use them.
Definitely.
Yeah, I mean, should I go as well? So I don't know if we can mention this customer name, but I guess I'll keep it anonymous. But it's a huge customer, and they have us embedded in their publicly facing website, and so millions of users going there, not knowing that the analytics part of it and data visualization part of it that they see there, it's powered by MicroStrategy, but it's fully integrated into their own web application. And to know that we can be implemented with that kind of scalability and put out there to the to the public of the internet, that's pretty exciting to think about. So
yeah, I think that's awesome. I think there's just so many different examples that we could talk through, especially with analytics, powering a lot of experiences across the globe. If you even think about our favorite apps like Spotify, et cetera, all those embedded algorithms behind it is pretty incredible. All right, so now I'm going to get into the questions talking about the base level of embedding, and then we'll get into more specifics. But the first question I wanted to ask you guys is I just want to get individual perspectives on why you think embedded is so important and why you think it's critical, for organizations to leverage these capabilities today.
I guess I can go ahead and start. Yeah. So, I mean, if you think about the journey of data and analytics, right, over the past tens of years, right? So, like, we've had companies kind of capturing data from all different systems, from like your POS system, from like all data about like merchandise, all data about like customer behavior, like all of that, and then we've been pitching BI as a way to leverage that data in order to make sense out of it, to make better decisions, to help you kind of run your business and be kind of data driven, right? When it comes to embedded analytics, we kind of take even a step further. Why can't we treat this data as a product, right? Data could be a very important product that you can monetize on and start kind of offering it as a value add to your customers. So that's what we work every day with customers on, is like how you can monetize on the data that you already have, how you can provide kind of value added services to your customers on top of what you're providing today, and hey, make more money out of it.
What I like about it too, if I can add, is the adoption factor. The fact that when you release some insights and you put it in a way that users have to search for it, well, it's there, but not all know where it is or take the time to go and find it. When you embed it into your user's everyday tool, this is where you get the most adoption, because people live their day-to-day life like me and my subway, and the data is just available where they need it, when they need it. So that's really what we're going for here.
Awesome. Anything to add, Alex, about being able to embed visualizations or specific items within an existing portal?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like the example I was talking about, it it was just basically using Dossier, right, with a bunch of different visualizations. Like there's a cool example, using the time series to show, market data. We have, by the way, quick plug in there, but we have stuff coming up in the pipeline in future releases, right, that will allow you to even feed real-time data into these kinds of visualizations, right? And so, I think, Dossier does provide all that flexibility for you to build an application that has containers where you can show the data and organize it as you want. We have overlays, for free for Canvas, so that you can, kind of like just get creative and use that flexibility to just create the experience that you need, right, for your application. Also, as you were talking about, the fact that how to put data out there, right, so that it can be found, makes me immediately think of Hyper, of course, right, where you can just put mount Hyper in that, in your own application, and it just suddenly pops up, literally, like giving those insights that the users, the business users, were not even thinking to ask yet, right? And it's right there for them to just run into it, basically. So,
I mean, it literally is embedded analytics. Like when I'm either talking about, the job I do, or talking to our customers, talking to our partners, I'm putting the hyperintelligence experience as part of our embedded capabilities. I really see it as like complementary to all the other experiences that we provide for embedded analytics.
Yeah. I was just letting everyone know that you guys do a lot of work product with customers, detailed work with a lot of different people. So I said you guys were going to go into that. So now that you're back, you can.
Awesome. Yeah, I don't know where I broke off, but let me just kind of reiterate. So yeah, as you mentioned, Holly, we do a lot of work with a lot of customers, and a lot of the challenges that we run into with customers are not necessarily around the technical challenges or about the product. It's actually about the processes. A lot of times customer purchase the analytics tool, they start kind of developing right away, or they start kind of, they have an urgency to, or an urge to kind of deploy fast for their customers. So they start kind of moving forward without a clear plan. And there are a few things that I learned from some of the engagements that I've been involved with. One is always start with the customer experience. I'll quote Steve Jobs here when he said that, like, always start with the customer experience. And when we talk about customer experience or user experience, we shouldn't be just thinking about the UI. Like UX is different than UI, and for all of us, we've heard our CTO say that like a few times, right? It's the experience is not just about how the interface is going to look. It's also how you're gonna, the workflow is gonna go. Like, do you need to authenticate? Do you need to build single sign-on, for instance? Do you have multi-tenancy, or like, is it a SaaS application? Is it are you deploying single tenant deployment? So like even like how you deploy MicroStrategy or how you deploy your application is gonna depend on what the end user experience will look like. So you have to define that first, right? Like, are your all tenants looking at the same thing? Like, do you have the same kind of UI for all your tenants, or like you're gonna have different tenants have a different UI, different logos, different things? We've had a customer, for instance, who and actually more than one customer, who has what they call partner tenants and customer tenants, right? So like partner tenants actually resell their own their application to other tenants. So sometimes it's not just white labeling MicroStrategy into another layer, but it's actually 3 or 4 different layers. So you have to kind of define all those experiences. And then like the DevOps also is an experience. How you're going to automate the deployment, how often you're going to upgrade, like all of that. Define that first and have a clear path. And then have a plan for the MVP. You don't need to boil the ocean all at once, right? We fall into situations with customers who want to build the whole schema, like the semantic graph, which is a very powerful feature of MicroStrategy, but they want to build it all at once and then start kind of developing applications on top of it. Sometimes that kind of that has been kind of like the waterfall methodology. Have been a little bit an older kind of methodology. We like to work on more agile, get speed to market. You've invested in MicroStrategy, realize that investment fast, right? And then build on top of it, right? Maybe the third thing, and the last thing I'm gonna talk about is the trap that a lot of customers that I've seen fall into, where like they are like, we're building this because the users are used to doing it this way, right? So like, especially when we get into situations where like the customer is replacing an older tool with MicroStrategy, right? They're like, well, I need this red button here, and we ask why. They're like, well, because the users had red button in in the older application. I think getting a new tool and deploying a new analytics tool is a fresh start. You need to go back to your user, ask them not just how they're doing things today, but how do you want to do things? Is that the most efficient? It could be the most efficient, but you could also learn a lot about like what the users actually really want. And don't fall into the trap of mimicking exactly what they had before. There's a reason you're moving out of the older tool and moving to the new tool. So don't fall into the trap of trying to mimic exactly what you had.
As Mo was like, walking us through the process, I thought about maybe adding like one of the customer value that they got. It was a fairly recent engagement, to roll back on the original question. That was like, the kind of experience and what they got out of like adding embedded analytics. In their case, it was a company that managed security for big cloud infrastructures. So their users dealt with a lot of data, like constant threat, like different IoT information coming through their application. And in reality, their customers, they had a lot of trouble understanding when they were facing an issue. What was the root cause of the issue? So usually what they were doing is they were picking up the phone or sending an email and reaching out to their customer support, right? To their customers, to their provider. And the provider could not handle that, especially because a lot of the insights could have been easily answered if the end user had the right analytics, in their hands from the beginning. So what they decided to use MicroStrategy for is to, spin out this like self-service experience. So, and their own customers, instead of like always picking up the phone and going and ask the question to their customer service, were able to do their own forensic like investigation, find their insights, understand the root cause, and so they were able to monetize it, etc. But one of the big impact was that it just like slashed the amount of calls, the volume of calls that was heading to the call center, and was able to leave like the teams in the call center to focus on, more important elements for which they're the only ones that can solve things, right? So that's one of the experience that came to mind.
Yeah, a lot of same time.
Sorry, I was going to ask Antoine, were they using the dossier editor to perform the self-service, or more like the control?
It's a good question. Actually, this we have plenty of different ways to enable self-service. One of them is to open up the full authoring experience. But in this case, they needed to curate it. So it was still very flexible because user had to drill into many different paths. You couldn't really like predict all those different workflows. But the way they designed it was to design very flexible consumer experience. So it was not the full authoring UI that they were giving to their users, but consumer experience that was taking advantage of all the different recent improvement that we baked into our platform. Like I'm thinking about attribute and metric selectors, about the panel stacks that you're able to switch to see what visualization really fits with your own understanding, which led, then the filters, using filters to filter other dossiers, etc. So that led the end users to discover a very simple to use user experience and user interface, to go back to your point, but still find their insights without requiring a phone call to the customer service.
Yeah, meeting users where they want to be, right, in their own applications. But Alex, you did bring up a good point that you can author in an embedded experience. And Mo, you kind of got to that. We know OEMs love embedded, obviously, but they do sometimes embed the authoring experience, right? And they can do that. Can you guys speak to that just a little bit more? And how easy it is?
There are actually, when we talk about authoring and editing, there are multiple layers that we like to work with customers on, right? So there is the experience that Antoine was talking about, which is really not even opening an editor and building a dossier from scratch or editing an existing dossier. Even within the consumption experience, we provide a lot of flexibility that actually gives you what we call kind of governed authoring, right? So you can select, like, for instance, you can switch between visualization. We can build panel stacks where, like, you can have 3 or 4 visualizations for the same type of data, and you can switch between it to see kind of what you're looking for. You can actually have metric and attribute selectors where you can actually even change the attributes or the KPIs that you're looking at on the visualization or on the grid, and change it. You can the regular stuff like filtering, drilling, and all that. Obviously, that's kind of table stakes, right? That's available even on the consumption. But things like you can even save your experience. So, like, we have bookmarks where you can, after you've made the layout changes that you want, or like the bookmarking changes that you want, you can actually save that experience in a bookmark so that you don't have to make those changes again. All of that is actually within our consumption experience without even getting to the editor. And then getting to more kind of sophisticated users, you can take it one step further and enable them to edit existing dossiers where, like, they can go in and do a little bit more, creating new pages, creating new chapters in their dossier. They can add more and more content, add more and more visualization, and then you can take it a step further and having import new data. So, like, not just the data sets that you curated for them, but actually taking it a step further. So there is a lot of, it's a kind of a continuum of, like, multiple experiences that you can give to your own users, and all of that is available obviously on an embedded on an embedded portal where, like, you can actually embed those experiences within your existing portal and white label it so that it's basically your experience, not a MicroStrategy experience.
Yeah, and the cool thing is that everything that you were describing is, like, fully controllable through privileges, controlling the individual user or user group access to certain objects, right? Certain capabilities. So you kind of can tailor the experience, differently depending on the user group needs, right? Depending how much or what kind of workflows you want to enable for them. So
and I hate to steal your thunder a little bit, Alex, but like again, talking about the embedding experience, there are ways that you can do it with embedding SDK through code, but, like, Alex actually is going to talk about, like, a way of doing it with no code at all. So, like, if you want to kind of configure those experiences without any line of code, you're able to do that also, like, with an embedded experience.
Yeah, no. So let's get into that. Can you guys talk about, what exactly customers, how they can embed, how they can use our tools to embed in different ways? I know, Antoine, you always get into there's 3 different types of embedding. And I think that's a great way to think about it if you want to go through those bullet points, and then we can kind of jump into it a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's pretty, I'm being reductive when I said that there are 3 experiences because, as, Alejandro was saying, you can, tailor it and control the experience so it's exactly the experience you want to have. But yeah, if I wanted to break them down in 3 experiences, the first one would be using our application capability that allow you to turn on and off a bunch of the MicroStrategy capabilities without any code, and this combined with all the way that we empowered UX designers to build beautiful analytics experiences by recreating their own navigation, build their own customer brand into it. So all of this allow you to create completely independent analytics application that you can embed wherever you want, and it follows your own, like, white labeled guidelines. It's branded exactly like your own company. You don't see the difference between the MicroStrategy content and your own application and your own core application. Now, the second experience is when we looked at the more of an embedding SDK experience, where you take one visualization here and there and decide to add it within your own workflows. And this is an extremely smart way to do it, because by doing it, you can leverage MicroStrategy's bidirectional interaction with your core application. So let's take an example, like the way that MicroStrategy allow an end user to filter the information that is on the screen, right? We have a user experience, a user interface designed for that. But if for some reason it doesn't match the way that you designed your core application, you want to do something different, you can control those filters from outside of the MicroStrategy visualization. You can control it directly from your application. Now, same goes the other way around. Like if you want the interaction of an end user on the visualization to trigger something within the core application, the sky is the limit. MicroStrategy hand over the context of what the user clicked on back to the parent application, and you can, trigger a logistical workflow that moves like some goods from one warehouse to another, like unlock like some, fundings for like a vaccine project to be worked on, any kind of workflow that is key to our customers' business can be triggered from the embedded analytics. And that kind of like goes to the highest level of adoption, right? Because you have a completely frictionless experience for the end user. The workflow is not interrupted at any point. It's not like the end user gets some insights from the analytics and then needs to think, oh, what's the next step? In what system should I log in to like do something? Actually, just like click on it and it happens. This is what I mean by uninterrupted.
Yeah.
And the third experience, that would be going back to what we mentioned in the beginning, to our hyper intelligence capability. The value proposal is really interesting here. And the example we have on the screen is actually reflected pretty well. We didn't have time to spend a couple of product management cycles deciding where on the screen we should have analytics showing up, but we needed to go live, go in production in a matter of weeks. So the customer just focused on what are the insights that my end users need to see at the right time. And we focus on identifying those keywords. So in these examples, there were like, lesson names and like student names. And when those keywords showed up on the application UI, our hypercards came in with the right insights that was needed at the right time with the next best action that could be done just by a click on the card and bring the user back exactly where within the parent application workflow the user should be, and all that in context. So the value proposal here is like, don't even touch your UI, just enable hyper intelligence and have embedded analytics everywhere.
Yeah, and then the video playing too. I know any of you can speak to this, but when we embed hyperintelligence, one of the coolest things is thresholds, right? So you might not even see the hypercard, but just based on the underline or the keyword that it's matching, I mean, that's pretty impressive that that's even embedded intelligence itself, right?
And it's very actionable. You're right, Holly. Like in the previous example, it was actually used in a very efficient way. Like the focus was online lessons. So at peak COVID, everyone was online, including students, and the idea was like, how could teacher make sure that students are engaged, that their capability to success is as high as possible. And so this hyper intelligence feature allowed the users that were in difficulty to just were easily noticeable by teachers, for example, who then had an easy way to re-engage, do one-on-ones and help students stay on track.
Yeah. No, definitely.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
Yeah.
The other thing there is that all these insights and data that gets surfaced to the users is just as governed as any other content that you have in MicroStrategy, right? So it's governed by the security filters, row level security, by permissions, by everything. So you have a fully governed, even though it's just embedded on the fly, kind of popping up, it's still fully backed by MicroStrategy's backend and governability rules and privileges, etc. So.
Yeah, I know I mentioned this earlier if you guys were with us, but Alex is kind of our expert of all things dossier and applications in-house in the headquarters. So Alex, I did want to ask you, so Mo mentioned earlier that we have this concept of applications, right? And it's no code, we know some code. We also love our developers who use all kinds of code. So we really serve all those different groups, no matter how you want to build or develop. Can you speak a little bit to how applications was built differently with no code and what that is?
Yeah, definitely. We should talk a little bit about that. So the vision for applications is that, like you said, Holly, right, enabling as many no-code configurations, right, or personalizations of the user experience as possible, right? So Mo was alluding to that as well, earlier. And the idea here is that if you're, embedding MicroStrategy, you don't have to be embedding it, by the way. But since we are in an embedded session today, if you're embedding MicroStrategy, the embedded SDK and all there's a lot of strong capabilities on the SDK that allow you to integrate it. But then when it comes to applications and having no code configurations, it's more like, how do you want to personalize the user experience? Things from white labeling the interface to also white labeling the content of the emails that get sent, for example, when the users share dossiers or share a bookmark in a dossier. To other controls like hiding some features maybe that are not part of the of the experience that you designed for your end-to-end application. To other parts of the experience such as authentication, right? And so all those configurations, all those items that can be personalized for an embedded scenario, whether it is for like a single set of users or in a multi-tenant setting, for example, if you have different kinds of customers of your own, or just multi-departmental setting as well, right? You can create the multiple applications in MicroStrategy, and all those configurations are saved in the metadata as well. So instead of you having to code them, put them in the code that integrates MicroStrategy with your hosting application, you set them as configurations. Of course, it's easier because you don't need a developer to define them. Although, of course, like you said, we love our developers, and they'll pretty much do a lot of heavy lifting, right, in other parts. But it really, the fact that those configurations are part of the metadata, enables you other things, right? Like migrations are more seamless. We're thinking on enabling telemetry, right, on some of those features that you control of experience. And so just to summarize, applications is basically a way to create sets of configurations for the user experience in library mostly, although we are, of course, looking into how that fits, in Hyper, right, as well. Many use cases there as well for personalization and configuration. But it just it allows you to define all these multiple configurations basically, and with the need of no code. So
yeah, so if I think about it for our embedded customers, right? So like you're building different experiences for your different tenants or like different user types. You want to build different experiences. So the application provide you a way of doing exactly that. So you define what your content is going to be, what kind of navigation workflow you want to have for your application. It could be one dossier, it could be multiple dossiers. How you're going to navigate? Are you going to embed like the home page where like the users can select multiple dossiers, or they start from a single dossier and then they can navigate within that dossier to other dossiers, right? So you define that navigation. You define a lot of different configurations, from everything from like, what are the filters? Are you going to enable them to share? Are you going to enable them to filter? Are you going to enable them to do specific things? And then you leverage our embedding SDK to actually embed that experience into your portal, right? So, and again, as Alex mentioned, we keep talking about no code, but like everything that we build through the interface has APIs that you can build it also with the APIs rather than, and automate that. If you want to build multiple applications, for instance, and you want to automate that process, you're able to do that as well.
That's funny. That's what I was about to say. Like, there's the low code customers, and we have the like, no, I just want code customers, and like we work both ways. Like, you can use MicroStrategy and all the APIs we have to build something that just like works, live and breathe on its own, right? Where you have a new tenant, you just sign the contract, and all the onboarding process is automated. Like MicroStrategy objects are automatically created. So this is definitely achievable. You just have to find your own level of comfort, your own, goals in terms of automation, and can be as low code or as code heavy as you want.
Yeah, the idea is, I guess, to enable full flexibility, and that any type of user, right, can leverage that flexibility. So,
yeah, absolutely.
No, for sure. I feel like when we talk about applications today, and it's funny, I'll let Mo mention, but I think, if I'm not mistaken, the concept of applications was actually built based on feedback from one of our customers live. We did do that. So responding to customer feedback, but it's almost like a mindset shift. It's like, how can I use Dossier, right, to be as creative as possible to build all these intuitive workflows? So when we say no code, it's almost different from how our users have traditionally built applications. It's thinking about what Dossier can do. Yeah.
Absolutely. And one of the, you're absolutely right, Holly. One of the things that we kind of thought about as we were building the application is also how to customize the experience for your different users without having to kind of hack any code or like change any like JavaScript file or like CSS files. And then when it comes time to upgrade, you're at a loss. You need to kind of preserve that code somewhere, because like when you upgrade, it's going to replace everything that you've done. Like a lot of the things that were in the past becoming more and more challenging in when you customize the experience and not able to maintain your upgrade cadence and make it hard for you to maintain the system. We're taking that all away by providing that way of customize. You can still configure the experience to be as different as you want, right? You can customize it for every tenant, but it's done in a way that's preserved in our metadata, as Alex mentioned, and that upgrades smoothly, and then you don't need to worry about like all that custom code that you've built and whether it's going to work in the new version or not.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, so I'm going to move into the last question here before we do have questions coming in live, so we will get to those questions, some about licensing, so that's interesting. But the one last question I have for you three is, we know that embedded is big here at MicroStrategy. We've always naturally gravitated towards that as one of our core competencies. Why do you think that customers should choose us versus a Tableau or a Power BI for embedding?
I'm happy to jump in, to talk about at least my perspective, and maybe we all have one. I'm sure we do. Like, for me, it's really looking at embedded analytics as like the visual being just the tip of the iceberg. Yeah, I mean, it's great. You have a bar chart in your new application. Awesome. But what really drives the MicroStrategy value is what's invisible underneath. The fact that like you build it once and every user that logs in sees it from a different lens with different security filters. You can have plenty of tenants. Every tenants have their data completely separated. They could potentially hit different databases. Like MicroStrategy allows you to build something that we call the semantic graph, which is a way for MicroStrategy to do computation for you. Every user is going to access the same analytics that you prepared, but in reality, their experience is going to be created live at runtime. And this is really what just enable, very secure, very governed analytics, but from our customers' perspective, from a very low cost of maintenance, because you're just maintaining a handful of objects, a handful of visualization, and everyone have their own curated and secured experience. That's my take. If you guys want to jump in, feel free.
Alex, you want to go next?
Yeah, I mean, I think
applications.
Definitely applications. No, and to reiterate that it's the robust backend, right? And I mean, it's one of a kind really in the market, and that all those governability controls, from privileges, object user access, and now the big vision that we have of and that it's already possible to do through applications, right? To allowing you to personalize really the experience as you want, right? According to your customer needs, to your user needs, and whether you embed it or not, I think that MicroStrategy is really probably one of the few tools in the market that allows you to have that control really, whereas while having like a no-code workflows, right? From those CS interface, just drag and drop, from your data sets into your visualizations, you get a bunch of beautiful, informative, useful visualizations, created in seconds, literally. So I think that's all really powerful. So.
Yeah, and oftentimes when we think about differentiators, we're thinking about the product. But one of our biggest strengths in MicroStrategy is that is our partnership with customers, right? So like we don't consider we don't consider them customers, we consider them partners, right? We want to make sure that they're successful, that they get to production fast, that they're able to monetize, as I mentioned earlier. So what we've done over the past few years is kind of building a partnership program where we have like our product team, so the people who are actually building the software, the people who are actually taking care of our roadmap, are working directly with our customers. We're a very, very customer-focused organization, right? And even our product team is. So as part of our product team, we actually work directly with customers. We've built a lot of actually best practices that we love to share with our customers. We open our roadmap to our customers. A lot of software companies, like whenever we give a roadmap presentation, we start with like the safe harbor statement, right? Like this is kind of like giving you a disclaimer that like the roadmap is a future-looking statement and all that. We take that very seriously because a lot of times in the meetings that we meet with the customers, our roadmap could be influenced, like could be changed by the customer feedback that we get, right? So it's always evolving. It's always getting better and better based on the feedback that we get from the customers. And then at the same time, we give back. We try to give back to our customers by showing them the best practices. I talked a little bit earlier about like the process and how this is very important. We built actually a template plan, like a deployment plan that we go to customers, and kind of obviously every customer is different, so there are a few modifications, but consider it like a checklist of the things that you need to focus on as you're deploying. If it's your first time deploying MicroStrategy, we're going to work with you on kind of getting that checklist, making sure that you have thought about everything, not just, again, the embedding experience, as Antoine mentioned, but like the multi-tenancy, the deployment, the authentication, the authorization, like all of those you've thought about quite carefully as you're deploying that experience. So again, I think this is one of our biggest differentiators, how we partner with our customers.
Yeah, I think that's an awesome one that we don't always expose as much unless you're actually working with us. So that was a really good answer, as well as a semantic graph. I think that's a huge one about how we were kind of built for performance and scale. And I think if you look at us compared to, other competitors based on just visualizations or, the front end, Alex, which we love, it's very similar, but then under the hood, we just have so much power that it's really exceptional to have both. All right. So that is it for me. Those were all my questions. I'm going to go through a few questions that are coming in. Specifically, we have 2 on licensing. So I do want to get into that a bit. So the first question, what licensing is required in order for end users to see embedded data? I don't know if you guys know that off the top of your head, but.
So we work with, obviously different customers have, we have a lot of different licensing options, obviously, but like for embedding specifically, like we don't have a separate license in order to embed MicroStrategy. It's the same software license, right? So like however your software license is structured, you don't need a separate license in order to use our embedding SDK, for instance. So yeah, so just like you can see it in the front end, you can deploy.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're usually very flexible on the licensing, so we have a lot of different options.
Yeah. So let us know if that made sense. You can type in a follow-up if you need to. Just let us know. Next question I want to go through, because this is one of Mo's favorites, is can you show us how to use the playground for embedding, or talk about it a little bit?
I guess we're going to have a dedicated session. That's exciting.
I know, yeah. We actually have, if you go to microstrategy.com/embedded analytics, we have a video, actually, a tutorial video that shows you how to leverage our embedded playground. So feel free to watch it and explore it. If you go to basically playground.microstrategy.com, you go to the playground itself and you can play around with it.
And keep in mind, this is also, we consider it as one of our products, so we are making change to it. We're getting feedback from the field. We're getting feedback from customers, and the design have changes from time to time. Like we're making it evolve, as at the same pace as MicroStrategy is evolving. So when we do new things within MicroStrategy, you'll find them in the embedding SDK playground as well. And it's only one of our playgrounds. Like that's one thing we should highlight as well. There's the embedding SDK playground. If what you want to learn is the embedding SDK, there's a REST API playground that I really invite you to check out as well. It's a Postman instance that allows you to not only interact very easily with with the different APIs that are offered within MicroStrategy, but also offers a bunch of workflows that are more like end-to-end, so that they're going to use multiple APIs one after the other to do some things that might be useful in your own business. So check it out.
Oh, did we lose a little bit of the questions?
Oh,
Yeah, Holly,
there you go. I think you're back.
there we go. I'm back. Sorry, I was
back.
muted.
Yeah.
Keep the questions coming.
Any thoughts on the relation between these great embedding capabilities and your cloud offerings? So I guess the power play of those two. That's an interesting question. How do they go together?
Yeah, I guess I can speak to that as well. So, I mean, obviously we have MicroStrategy is a very open platform, right? So you can deploy on-prem, you can deploy in cloud. We have you can deploy on AWS or Azure. So like it's like we have flexibility also on the type of cloud that you can deploy on, and you can deploy on multiple clouds. When it comes to embedding, there are multiple options as well, right? So like our cloud, we have a managed cloud, which is managed by us. But what we see a lot from our embedded customers is that they want to embed MicroStrategy. Like they have cloud teams. It's usually ISVs, software companies that they have other software in the cloud. They want to include our software within their cloud offering as well, right? As part of a SaaS offering, for instance. And recently, we've worked with a few customers actually to deploy MicroStrategy on AWS on what we call MicroStrategy Next, which is our new MicroStrategy deployment methodology, leveraging the container technology. So it's all microservices, breaking down the MicroStrategy platform into a set of containers that like we actually deploy much easily, and it has a lot of the APIs that you need. So like it's not just the container images; it's actually all the API infrastructure that you need and the interface that you need to manage it, to upgrade it, to scale it. So it fits very well within your CI/CD pipelines and your basically your entire stack. And it's easy to manage. I've been again, I mentioned I've been in MicroStrategy for 12 years. There were a couple of years where I was managing our upgrade program worldwide, and to see how far have we come in terms of like making the upgrade very, very smooth for our customers, leveraging that new cloud technology. It's actually amazing. Like you can upgrade it in just a few minutes, finish everything end to end. You can automate. Antoine talked about our REST APIs and CI/CD automation, so you can automate all your testing, all your validation, everything, and finish the whole upgrade in a matter of minutes. So I encourage our customers to kind of think about that as their deployment option, leveraging our new technology. And like I said, we're working with a few customers actually to deploy it for them as well.
Awesome, great. And then yes, so we had a few like follow up to the licensing questions. First thing I would say, always talk to your account like executive or rep. They'll definitely help out with licensing. But you all are correct in that each user that's actually obtaining information from MicroStrategy will most likely have a license of some sort. But sometimes it does differ with the embedding cases, so just make sure to reach out to them. All right, next question is from the website Social versus the ones in the chat. This one is coming from Social, and it's, can you add next steps or actions such as approving quotes from the dossier? So I guess similar to Hyper.
Yeah, well, I mean, we do have a rich feature set that really comes all the way from report service documents, and now it is available in Dossier as well, which we call transaction services, and that allows write back capabilities that you can kind of like create as part of your whole workflow, right? Like Mo, you were describing an example of that. Was it you, Antoine? I think both of you, I think it said at some point, right? So it's, I think, yeah, like you get your insights, data visualizations, etc. And you can take action right there, right? In the same dossier, for example, by updating the system of record or sure, submitting an approval, for example, right? The possibilities are endless, and this is an area that we keep investing. So future releases are coming, with additional flexibility and even more powerful workflows that you're going to be able to create, leveraging Python, for example, Python scripts that run in the server that you could then kind of like invoke and pass parameters to from your application, your dossier-based application. So yeah, so I'm glad that you had a video handy for that, Holly. So yeah, I think transaction services is really, really exciting, and it's being provided with a much more, easy interface on the authoring side. Really, the way to configure a transactional grid, for example, where you can edit the fields either with pre-established options that the user selects from, with a drop down, for example, or a completely editable input field where you can just type in, right? validation rules, of course, so that those values that are being transacted are within specific parameters or specification. So, and that's all really easy to configure. So I think it's pretty exciting. I'm excited to see how our customers.
Well, one thing I'll add to that is that's a good use case to showcase, how there's always multiple ways to do it in MicroStrategy. And so that's similar to what I mentioned using the embedding SDK and the idea that you can grab the context and then, do your own workflow. But here, what it highlights is that you can either way, do it within MicroStrategy because, we carry this capability, or do it outside of MicroStrategy. And, my perspective is skewed toward doing it in MicroStrategy because it comes with a lot of added perks, like everything that, we were just talking about goes with like the telemetry going on it. So, who's using it, who did it, when, at what time, at what frequency. And that's just one of the elements, but it gives you some additional context to keep building a better use cases, a better application.
Awesome. Yeah, perfect. And then I will end on this one last question, which is, what is the learning curve for my DevOps team to start using all the embedded tools you just mentioned?
Yeah, so that question, to answer that question today is totally different than what I would have answered like 2 or 3 years ago, right? Obviously, MicroStrategy have done a lot of investment in building DevOps tools in order to help us maintain, manage, operate your platform. And traditionally, we had a lot of different kind of proprietary tools that we used in order to migrate objects, in order to test it and validate it, in order to automate certain workflows. And there was obviously a learning curve to learn how to use those tools, or if you want to kind of build a script for it, we had a tool called Command Manager where you had to learn the script for that in order to build it. A couple of years ago, we actually moved all of those workflows into our workstation interface. And with the workstation interface, we moved it into also REST APIs, and we've built a Python library that automate a lot of those activities. So I would say if you have developers that already know Python or already know REST API, you don't have to use Python. You can use Java. You can use any other tool, and you can call our REST APIs directly. Or if you have Python, we already have libraries in Python that will automate a lot of those tools. So the learning curve has significantly decreased because it's tools that everybody uses. And every year we have our World Conference, and with that we meet with a lot of our embedded customers, and we ask a lot of our developers, what are the most common tools that you use, or what are the common programming languages that you use for DevOps? And Python is overwhelmingly number one all the time. So chances are your users or your DevOps team or your developers basically know Python, know REST API. So, and with our REST API playground and the different playgrounds that we have, we make it very, very easy. So it's a very, very low learning curve.
Got it. And then kind of related to what we just asked, so I'll take this one from Will. Do we have any plans to include CI/CD pipeline out of the box?
I think my way to look at it is that we are kind of doing it. We cannot really take the approach of selecting a handful of CI/CD tools out of the gazillion CI/CD tools that exist and say, all right, we're gonna just build an end-to-end integration with those, just because the next day we're gonna have a customer coming in and it's like, great, thank you, but I'm not using it. Can you do it for this one? And we wouldn't be able to scale and keep up, right? So our choice is to stay agnostic, and we build layers that everyone can use no matter what tool you're using. We have our MicroStrategy layer. On top of that, we build a REST API for every single thing that you can do within MicroStrategy. And because that was not, with the feedback we got, it was like, it's awesome, but we don't want to rebuild all those workflows from scratch. So we build our Python layer on top of it, which is using our REST APIs, but this time in more end-to-end workflows. And those languages are, compatible with every single CI/CD tool in the world. So this is really our take on it, is that we will do our best to create all the workflows you need in Python. And from there, you'll be able to leverage them within any of the application you want.
Awesome. Yeah, so I hope that helps. For my licensing people in the chat, again, just make sure to reach out to your account executive because they will be able to help with specific scenarios more than we can, depending on what you're building, who are the external users, etc. But for now, thank you guys so much for being here. That was super informative. I love talking to these guys. But everyone have a great rest of your Monday, and we'll talk to you all soon. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you all.
Thanks, guys.